Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me at this time. My name is Shavi Zane, and I'm coming on to have a discussion with the chosen right now in regards to sex. So let's talk about sex, okay? This topic of discussion is very important because many of you out there are currently in your season of cultivation. And so it's very important for you to be aware of who you're sharing your sexual energy with. For many of you, it's that season of withholding your sexual energy and practicing abstinence, or for some of the males, practicing semen retention. During this season of cultivation, you want to be very, very aware of those sexual partners who are hyperactive sexually. And when I say hyperactive, I'm talking about those who, let's just say, if you've known this person for a while, you know they've changed, but you've gotten into a relationship with them, but you know that they've had a past history of hyperactive sexual activity where they might have been with multiple partners or shared their energy with a lot of people in their past. Um, Now, not saying that redemption can't happen after someone has extended themselves in that way. But consider that a lot of times people who are no longer sharing themselves with multiple partners will get with one partner and be very hyperactive, where there's like this insatiable appetite where they cannot get enough. Now, when you're dealing with a chosen seed specifically, that is not an uncommon theme, because as a chosen seed, you emit a particular energy. There's a certain type of auric field that you project that is very desirable for people who are operating in their lower nature. And so you may attract people who are very hyperactive sexually. And unfortunately for a lot of chosen, you might have also gone through sexual traumas in your childhood where you might have been surrounded by people who were in that state of perversion and just had this insatiable appetite, and they was willing to get themselves off by any means necessary. And unfortunately, many of you had to suffer through the trauma of sexual molestation. When we're talking about cultivation, this is that season of, everything is being nurtured, right? Your ideas, your visions, your creativity is in the process of being nurtured. And so it's still very fragile, right? It's still very delicate energy where you're wanting to make sure that the environment is conducive to growth. You're wanting to make sure that the climate is right, the energy is right, the atmosphere is right. And so when you're talking about sexual energy, that is the one, whoever you're dealing with on a sexual level, that's the one person who you are sharing your energy with on a much closer, more intimate level than anyone else in your life, right? Anyone else in your circle, because they're likely the only person that you're dealing with. But when you consider their past history and where they are today concerning their growth, if this person hasn't done enough work to clear themselves of the past sexual energies, if they haven't healed from particular sexual traumas, or if they still have unhealthy sexual behavior patterns and they're kind of using your energy to fulfill that need or that insatiable appetite, it can be very draining. And when you're talking about cultivation, you're also talking about the time of creativity. At that point, you are the co-creator of your life. And so creativity is directly connected to your sacral chakra. Your sacral chakra is orange and it is around your genital area. And so you can either create a baby or you can create your vision. It depends on what you want to do with your sexual energy. If you choose to withhold your sexual energy, especially during that season of cultivation, is a very, very, very powerful thing to do, because it helps you to take all of that sexual energy and pour it into your passions. And so rather than extending it towards another person who might take it and, the energy just kind of gets, it pretty much gets, it's wasted. Or depending on the type of person that you're dealing with, it can be siphoned and used to actually help them to manifest their vision. Or it can be siphoned, if they are a pawn to the powers that were, they can be used as a vessel to siphon your creative energy and to pretty much hand that energy over to the powers that were, where it's used to help to create their vision. Okay? Now that's on a much deeper level. But if we stay a little bit more on the surface, just understanding that your sexual energy is very important for you to withhold it and to know how you're utilizing it and the type of partners that you're dealing with during your season of cultivation. It can be a challenge, okay? It can be a very challenging thing to practice abstinence, especially if you're actively in a relationship or a marriage. For those of you who are in marriages and you have a partner who is hyperactive sexually, it's important to be equally yoked when it comes to your spiritual journey. The questions that you want to ask yourself during that time of cultivation: is your partner in alignment with you? Have they been doing the work to heal, or are they at a standstill? Do you find yourself way up here and they're way down here after several years of, you're growing, you're exploring, you're evolving, and they're just kind of staying the same, but yet they're pulling and pulling and pulling on your sexual energy? You want to ask yourself that question. You want to ask yourself, have they dealt with sexual traumas that they still haven't healed from? Because if they haven't, then that sexual energy is not really being utilized in a high vibrational way. They can be using it as a fix, as a means, like a pleasure-seeking behavior pattern, just to feel good in a moment, but not necessarily utilizing that time and that energy to help cultivate and to create. If you're in a healthy relationship, though, in a healthy marriage, and your partner is doing just as much work to evolve as you are, then sexual energy can actually help to enhance what you're creating. It can expedite the growth process. It can help you to manifest if both of you if you're on the same accord when it comes to what sexual energy is all about, how to use it, and how to create. But again, quite often the chosen will come across people who are very hyperactive sexually. They enjoy you, but they don't understand why they want to be in your sexual energy so much. And it can get to a place where it becomes draining because you're not on the same accord when it comes to how it's being shared, why it's being shared, what can be created in that process. They're just taking, and not giving anything in return. Okay? And so a lot of you might come to that place if you find yourself connected to someone who you're not married to, and you know that they still have some unhealthy sexual patterns, this unhealthy, insatiable appetite, but they're not doing any work to heal or to balance out their energy, then you might find yourself having to walk away from these people so that you can actually pour your energy and your focus into your passions. Because when you really look at it, what's more important? Being in a partnership with someone because they are a placeholder? I'm talking about those relationships that don't really have any substance to them. You don't really see things going anywhere. It's toxic, it's karmic, but the best thing about it is the sex. But you're in that season of life where you're creating. You are ready to build generational wealth. You're ready to receive your inheritance, your birthright, and sovereignty. And you've been doing the spiritual work. And so you find yourself outgrowing that phase of that relationship. You find yourself outgrowing that person. You find yourself not being as connected or even sexually attracted to that person in that way, because you yourself, you're healing your sacral chakra. But you also find that there is a stunted growth when it comes to what you're working on and what you're trying to manifest. A lot of times that is the actual reason behind the procrastination or the self-sabotage or the lack of creativity or it's like the creative blocks. Usually it's because of a very unhealthy sexual relationship. And so you're a lot tougher than you think you are out there, chosen. If you find that you are involved in that type of situation and you're still trying to figure out why things are not growing, and you know that you're putting in the work, but that one person is like the common denominator of it all, then a lot of times you have to make that major sacrifice to put things to rest so that you can get back focused on your purpose. Okay, get back focused on your purpose. And so you may have to shed, energies that no longer match your frequency, because you find yourself rising higher and higher. Your energy is evolving. You're becoming a new creature, a new being. And so it's just not in alignment anymore. And whereas before you might have engaged in these acts and thought, okay, well, it was nice to engage in. You might have felt like the passion was there. And so that might have, in your mind kind of indicated that maybe things would be able to go the distance. But after a certain period of time, you could start to realize like if it's draining you, if you're starting to feel like that person is just constantly pining for your sexual energy, and you're like, look, I need to focus over here. I need to rest. I need to replenish my energy. I need a break from this. But you find that they have a hard time accepting that, or they just have this, you know the difference between someone who has a healthy sexual appetite and someone who is just dealing with the Jezebel spirit, and they have yet to fully release that energy. Someone who might have unhealthy fantasies, or who has had unhealthy sexual experiences, but they're not fully open or honest with themselves about how that's affecting and impacting their current way of self-expression. But you yourself, you're very intuitive, you're very discerning, and you're able to pick up on particular things. There's certain ways that people express themselves sexually that will give you a strong indicator as to whether or not they're carrying the Jezebel spirit, or if they still harbor sexual traumas and things like that that they haven't fully healed from. Even sexual confusion is something that you'll be able to pick up on the more that you open up your spiritual eyes and pay close attention to people's particular desires, or how they, their mannerisms, how they express themselves sexually. It's certain things that you'll be able to pick up on. And so when you come into that space of realizing that, all right, this is not in alignment with my growth, you don't really see that person evolving out of that energy because they're not doing the work on themselves to heal that, then you have to withdraw your energy and get back focused on the task at hand, because ultimately you're here for a purpose. And when you're in the process of cultivation, it's not just about creating things outside of yourself, it's about creating the best version of yourself. And so, regardless of what type of growth you're working on at that time, whether it's within you or a creative ideal that's outside of yourself, you want to be as intentional as possible. You want to recognize that the energy is very, very sensitive. And so you don't want to give people too much space or room to come in and, wreak havoc on that. Okay. Or to plant weeds amongst your soil or your harvest, And so unfortunately, it may be painful for some. It may be hard for people to accept that you are withholding your energy and you want to just focus solely on yourself, solely on your passion, solely on your purpose, until the right person comes along who is healed. But it's really not about coddling anybody's feelings, because your purpose is far more important than a temporary climax, okay, or a temporary sense of pleasure. Because at a certain point in your growth, you come to a place where you learn how to create pleasure from within. And so you don't seek outside of yourself in order to fulfill those needs. You're passionate and excited about your creative works, your visions, your manifestations. And so when you're pouring into that, you don't really even realize that there's an absence of sex in your life, because you get so you have so much passion and purpose that that's where your sexual energy goes. Okay, you feel fulfilled enough. The dopamine is flowing very freely because you are doing what you love every day. Whether it's, again, working on yourself or working on something outside of yourself, you have more than enough happiness and pleasure in that to where you don't need another person to bring that satisfaction to you through a sexual connection. And so it's very important to analyze the person that you decide to be with romantically before y'all even get to that place of sexual activity. Pay attention, ask those vital questions, even if it's uncomfortable. Sometimes you just got to ask the uncomfortable questions. It's better to run a person off early than to have them all up in your sexual energy later and to find out things after the fact that could be detrimental to your growth, okay, and your creative works, your creative ideas, that passion, that energy that you need to start projects and to finish them. Is better to know upfront than to wait. You know a lustful spirit when you see one, though. from the initial encounter that you have with that person, depending on how you meet them. Sometimes certain encounters, you're not able to fully gauge that, depending on, if y'all didn't meet, and if y'all met and it wasn't really a romantic connection that you had initially. It could have been more business related, so you may not have seen it. But some things you usually do see in a person, especially if your spiritual eyes are open. But a lot of times, if your sacral chakra is not fully healed, then you may attract that person into your life and still engage with them, knowing that, ultimately down the line when you find out, no, it's too draining. Okay. It's too draining. And so pay attention, be very discerning when it comes to your energy, and protect this time of cultivation. Protect those seeds that you've planted and that you are nurturing, because beautiful things will come from it as long as you have the right energy and the right atmosphere. So that's my message for you all. I didn't want to keep you too long. I hope that this brought you some clarity for those of you who might have been asking specific questions like, can this person, cause a postponement in my growth? Some of you have already detected that someone might be causing a postponement in your growth, and you're feeling like you might want to withdraw your energy. And so really consider that. It might hurt, it might be challenging, but it doesn't mean that you and that person cannot reconnect later on. It just means that maybe they're not on the right vibration for y'all to be able to grow together and not be a hindrance to the other person in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So you want to be able to add to people's life, not take away from it or cause postponement or stagnation or anything like that. So that's my message. I love you all. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this subject, and I'll talk to you all next time.